me presento, buenos días a todos. Mi nombre es Alberte Santos, soy socio y consejero delegado de una compañía dedicada al mundo de la comunicación y las relaciones públicas. Desde hace unos cuantos años llevamos trabajando muy intensamente para los diferentes segmentos que forman parte de la cadena de valor, de la altísima cadena de valor, que es el mundo del turismo. Y desde la perspectiva que nosotros trabajamos, pues tratamos de ayudar a que las organizaciones, las cadenas hoteleras, las infraestructuras, los touroperadores, las agencias de viajes, las compañías aéreas, conecten mejor a través de todos sus procesos de comunicación con los públicos claves que tienen como reto comunicar. Bueno, nosotros, Evercom este año tiene por primera vez la oportunidad de formar parte de los partners de este evento y lo primero que quería agradecer, y lo entenderéis muy bien todos, pues es agradecer al Instituto Tecnológico Hotelero la invitación para que sea Evercom quien presente el International Travel Media Meeting de este año. Es un encuentro que se pone en marcha, además, por segunda vez en el marco de Fiturtech y yo creo que es una demostración de que ITH, el Instituto Tecnológico del mundo de los hoteles, de verdad está apostando por la innovación y por incorporar todo esto que llamamos nuevas tecnologías, nuevas relaciones sociales al entorno de la industria. El objetivo de esta edición, y ya con esto voy a ir concluyendo, el objetivo de esta edición es conocer, debatir y anticipar si es que en la era en la que estamos cabría pensar que podemos anticiparnos a algo sin que algo que viene detrás se acabe anticipando a lo que nosotros estamos pensando. Pero decía, el objetivo de esta edición es tratar de debatir y anticipar cómo las compañías del sector turístico se preparan para aprovechar el concepto de Internet para todas las cosas y la gestión de ese gran monstruo, pero grandísimo monstruo por explotar, que es el mundo del Big Data. Yo creo que algunos de los pilares que, más que yo creo, diría, estoy seguro que 3 de los grandes pilares que armarán los discursos y los debates de esta sesión serán pues, dispositivos, conectividad y movilidad. La jornada de hoy incluye 3 grupos de debate que contarán con grandes profesionales que además pertenecen a empresas que están siendo especialmente activas y que están siendo verdaderamente innovadoras para, uno, contribuir al desarrollo de esta industria o, en segundo lugar, que contribuyen con sus propias experiencias a compartir el futuro que puede venir a través de todo esto. Pero antes de que arranquen estos grupos, quería presentaros a Tim Cannon, que nos va a hablar sobre los biohackers. Él nos mostrará cómo será el futuro de los viajeros, de los turistas, en un mundo en el que todos estaremos conectados con chip. Tim, please, let us know how is the world, how is the planet of biohackers.
I think I have a mic here, so.
I'll have to change the slides for you.
Okay. Oh, you are? Okay. We tested the clicker before, but now we're having technical difficulties, which is kind of ironic because I implant technology into my body, so it's kind of unnerving. Okay. So my name's Tim Cannon, and I'm with a biotech startup called Grindhouse Wetware. Basically, we're biohackers. We use a combination of software, hardware, biology, and technology, as well as creative thinking to figure out ways to enhance our day-to-day experiences and add a little bit of novelty to our lives as well. Now, in some cases, these enhancements are practical, and in some cases, they're novel. However, one thing is for certain, they're changing the depth and breadth of the human experience and allowing the previously unimaginable. Now, here are some of the augments that I have. I have an RFID chip implanted in my hand, which allows me to unlock doors or start cars or identify myself in any way. I also have a chip in my other hand, which allows me a small amount of onboard storage. This storage is quite secure. and I can store things like websites, GPS coordinates, these sorts of things directly in my body. I also have a magnet implanted in my finger. This allows me to feel electromagnetic fields. I can feel live wires behind walls, I can feel hard drives working, I can feel technology, and I can feel intuitively electricity. Now, here we have the Circadia device. Now, this was a proof of concept. Basically, what we wanted to show was that a group of hackers using open source and available technology could build something that could be safely implanted in the human body. And we did just that. But rather than explain it to you, I'm going to show you a brief clip of what I've done and the lengths I've gone to incorporate myself into my digital environment. The human body is really failing in almost every way. I want to live to be thousands of years old. I don't want to die. I don't understand why anybody would.
Hacker dringen inzwischen nicht nur in Kommunikationssysteme, sondern auch in unsere Körper ein. Unabhängig von der etablierten Medizin arbeiten Biohacker daran, die Grenzen der Evolution zu überwinden. Ich bin in Essen, um den Biohacker Tim Cannon zu treffen. Tim wird hier einen Chip in seinen Unterarm implantiert bekommen, der ihm erlaubt, seine eigenen biometrischen Daten aufzuzeichnen und zu übertragen. Ich möchte herausfinden, ob diese Technologie uns einer Zeit näher bringt, in der jeder ein Cyborg sein kann.
My name's Tim Cannon. I'm with a company called Grindhouse Wetware. We do biohacking, essentially. We build devices that are meant to integrate with the human body. We basically focus on the merging of man and machine in a kind of a DIY context. So this is the Circadia. It's somewhat large.
Once this chip is implanted, what are you going to do with it?
Simply because it simply currently reads my temperature data, I'm basically going to use that to determine if there are certain things that are causing my temperature to fall or rise. Also, I'm probably going to set it up so that it'll send me a text message if it thinks I'm getting a fever.
When we put this in, it will make history.
Das, was Steve und Tim hier machen, mag auf den ersten Blick gar nicht so spektakulär wirken, aber mit ihrem Do-it-yourself-Ansatz sind sie viel radikaler als alles, was gemeinhin als Science-Fiction durchgeht.
But it's closed, it's good, you know, it's working. So, want to see?
Sure. Demonstrate that thing.
All right, let's see here. And connected. So let's go ahead and we'll turn on the light.
Can you show me the transmitting of the data? Is that via Bluetooth, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me reconnect. There's some data for you. And that's, so one more. Bam.
That's amazing.
Every so many minutes, it'll turn on the temperature sensor. Now, this actually conserves the battery. So it's temperature over time, which is kind of cool, because then you can kind of graph it and chart it and do whatever you want there.
Leute wie Tim sehen die experimentelle Beschleunigung der menschlichen Evolution als eine Do-it-yourself-Aufgabe. Im Angesicht der zunehmenden Verdatung und Vermessung unserer Gesellschaft bleibt aber die Frage, wer überhaupt darüber bestimmen wird, was ein Körper kann und was die menschliche Existenz sein wird.
So, now just to ease everybody's concerns, the devices that we're building in my lab now are much smaller. That device was actually not designed to be small, and in fact it's quite a bit more dramatic of a display when you have it that large. You get a lot more questions than if I had a small, tiny device. So but it illustrates the lengths that I'm willing to go to begin attempting to cheat death and disease and to attempt to get true immortality and actually become bigger, better, faster, stronger. These are the sorts of things that the human race has always been striving for. And this is just the next logical step, is the seamless integration between biology and our digital world. Now, right here we have the passport of a fellow biohacker named Neil Harbison. Now, Neil, who grew up in Catalonia, was born with a condition that limited his vision to grayscale. He could see no colors. And what he did was he created an antenna that he had permanently affixed to his skull, and this would change colors into tones that he could then hear. He can actually differentiate color better than the human eye using this antenna. Now, normally you're not allowed to have any external devices in a passport. However, this is not considered an external device. It's considered part of him. It is Neil. Now, here we have some pictures of some of the devices that we're building in our lab. Over here we have the North Star device. Now, the North Star device mimics bioluminescence. Also, it will be able to capture your motion, so that if I make a gesture like this in the air, it can kick off any behavior that I want, such as locking my doors, turning on my lights, sending a text message. And this will be right on board. It's similar to having almost like a magic wand, only there is no wand. You are the wand. Now, we also have bottlenose. Now, I said I had a magnet implanted in my finger. This device actually talks to the magnet in my finger and allows me to take any sensor whatsoever, any digital input, and immediately feel it intuitively. So if I have a distance sensor, I can feel it coming in and out. I can walk around a room with my eyes closed, simply using the magnet in my finger. However, distance is something we all understand. What about things like how radioactive does it feel here? How much CO2 is in the environment? These are the sorts of things that you can begin to naturally mash up into your data and into your understanding of what's going on in the world around you in an intuitive way that doesn't require any attentional resources. Now, where is this headed and how does it affect the future of travel? Well, big data and quantified self are kind of coming together to start predicting behaviors about us. If you've used Facebook or Amazon or Netflix, you know that these algorithms are capable of predicting your behavior based on demographic information, past behavior, these sorts of things. However, we're beginning to get to a point where the Internet of Things is collecting all of this data, and we're going to begin to collect more and more biological data. However, the Internet of Things, for example, I have a Fitbit. Now this tracks my caloric output, it tracks my steps and my activity. I also have a smartwatch. Now, my Fitbit is connected to my phone, and my phone is also connected to my smartwatch. The battery in my Fitbit went low the other day. It told my phone told my smartwatch vibrated my wrist and told me, hey, your Fitbit battery's low. And these things are having a conversation behind my back. And I was the last person to be informed of this information. So it's kind of interesting, these devices having this conversation. And more, I'm going to begin to integrate the stuff that I have implanted in my body into that digital sphere. Now, with simple measurements such as heartbeats per minute, blood pressure, blood glucose, blood oxygen, and these are things that we've already started working on in our lab, and in some cases we already have done. Even with these simple measurements, you can determine a whole host of information about a person, especially if you track them over time. Imagine going into your doctor and saying, check 2 hours ago, I felt something in my heart. That would be actually extremely helpful for your physician. A lot of times these things aren't really necessarily there when you get into the doctor, but they are a problem. Now, if we could go a little deeper and get into blood chemistry, we could really begin to start telling things about what's going on in a person's life. Oxytocin, for example, is a pair bonding hormone. This is expressed when mothers are breastfeeding, when people are falling in love, friendships. It fosters trust and concern. Dopamine expresses joy and pride in accomplishments. Cortisol can indicate your stress levels. Estrogen can indicate ovulation. The list goes on. Now, these devices, they're encouraging me to live a healthier lifestyle. They're encouraging me to be a better person. But imagine what we can do when we get these deeper data. Try to imagine a text message that says, every time you're around Thomas at the office, you get really stressed out. You should really avoid that guy before your big meeting because he really bums you out. Also, we have more non-obvious kind of items that might come up with some of these algorithms, such as Amazon might say, oh, you bought a hammer. Would you like some nails? That's kind of easy. How about you bought a hammer, but then for the next every time you buy a tool, for the next 2 weeks, you're really stressed out, you never finish the project. Here's a number of somebody that'll do it for you because you're a shitty carpenter. So these are kind of the interesting and non-obvious things that we can start to really mine out. Now, in terms of travel, what we have here is a hyperlapse of it's called a Google Street View Hyperlapse tool. Now, we didn't record this footage. This was done in seconds on the fly, and this is the exact path we took to get to the Pittsburgh airport when we flew here. Now, you would be able to do this in the future with travel itineraries. You'd be able to immediately send them, be able to look through them and preview them in real time. And you'd be able to play and test your vacations. So let's picture a family in the future, in 2025, let's say. Now, the data and the algorithms that are surrounding the family are looking at their stress levels, looking at their itineraries, looking at what's coming up. And they say, based on your stress levels and based on your bonding levels, we've predicted that this is the time you should take a vacation. And it mashes up a bunch of preferences and sends several possible itineraries. These itineraries are reviewed in hyperlapse, allowing the family to kind of preview their vacation, mix and match and swap these things out on the fly. And as they do this, so for example, our family would pick, say, a London itinerary. Now, this would include a culinary tour for the parents who are foodies, and it would also include maybe a trip to the Churchill War Rooms for the son who's a history buff. And these can be, again, reviewed, commented, swapped out. But then once the vacation is actually started, you could easily see how, for example, things would get changed up in the moment. The theme park that you want to go visit is has an unusually low amount of visitors. You should go now because the lines will be really low. And further than that, as the biological data gets collected, you can anonymously begin to look at this data, send it up anonymously, and then it can say things like, men of your age and weight typically burn this many calories walking through this particular museum. Based on what you've had for breakfast today, you better get some more calories or you're going to be grumpy. Now, another trend that's coming pretty quickly is telepresence. Now, telepresence is this, things like Google Hangouts, Skype, FaceTime. This is allowing us to be anywhere, essentially, on the globe and communicate audio, video in real time. However, very soon, and with the low cost of robots and drones, you're going to begin to see telepresence become a real mobility thing, a way in which we can interact from a distance. Now, right here I've featured The Big Bang Theory, which is an American sitcom. And the scientist Sheldon Cooper has decided that the world is too risky and he's going to lock himself in his room and interact with the world only through this mobile virtual presence device. Now, this episode kind of comedically features the shortcomings of this technology. But those things are going to be overcome very quickly. Now, here we have Henry Evans. Henry Evans became quadriplegic after a medical emergency in 2003. However, pairing with an organization called Robots for Humanity, he's actually begun to control drones and be able to interact with his family again. He can interact with his family, he can look around his house, he can take a private stroll through his garden. He's actually been taken out of his bed and he can interact with the world. And this is a big deal. Now, here we have Courtney Scott. Now, she's a travel blogger who took her passion for travel and turned it into a career. Also, we have, if you have teenage kids, you might know this name, PewDiePie. Now, PewDiePie is the most subscribed channel in YouTube history. More people subscribe to PewDiePie than anyone else. And what he does is these things called Let's Play videos, where he plays a video game and you see his face in the top corner, you get to see his reactions, and it's very comedic. Now, this is going to mash up into a new type of celebrity. people who live stream their entire experience, whatever they're doing day to day. And as they do these things, you're going to it'll become an interactive experience. You'll be able to tweet in what you'd like them to do, what you'd like them to see. And that will become an important part of the actual experience, will be this audience interaction. In some cases, they may lead them to comedic events and kind of cause kind of cultural mishaps, that sort of thing. Now, this might sound like kind of fiction, or this isn't going to happen, but it's actually already starting to happen. I'll show you another short clip.
Introducing the world's first way to truly explore a city before you even arrive. Say hello to the Melbourne Remote Control Tourist. Melbourne is a city that lends itself to discovery. So we made a web experience that enabled potential visitors to do just that. Through Twitter and Facebook, users could decide what they wanted to see and do, all through the eyes and ears of our remote control tourists.
How's that?
Real city explorers, connected to the world via the internet. What they experienced, you experienced. Over 5 days, our tourists received almost 9,000 requests.
Mark and Greg want me to try a chili. You know what? I knew this was coming. Ah! Oh. It's hot.
They sampled cheeses, learned the art of pizza making.
Just so you know, James online wants anchovies on the pizza.
They delivered cupcakes.
Can I order 24 cupcakes, please? Free cupcakes!
Travelled by foot, bike, taxi, tram, boat, even helicopter.
Check this out. What an amazing view we are.
Took over 2,000 Instagram photos. Experienced firsthand some of Melbourne's best events and festivals.
I'm going to run the final 100 metres of the Melbourne Marathon. See, I've even got my number.
And checked into hundreds of great locations. And if you didn't know Melbourne, an interactive map showed what was nearby and worth checking out, with over 500 Melbourne businesses featured.
Ding dong!
And the more requests our tourists got, the more amazing Melbourne content we created, resulting in a city guide like no other, with over 80 hours of unique first-person footage, pictures, maps, and city highlights for people to use for years to come. In all, 158 countries and almost 4,000 cities participated from around the globe, with an average time on site of over 6 minutes, exploring the depth of what Melbourne has to offer.
Okay, so you get the point there. And now, obviously, these guys look silly with their, giant helmets and, massive kind of devices and microphones and this sort of thing. However, you can see how with a Google Glass or something like this, it would easily become inconspicuous and you'd be able to just kind of go about your day. Another interesting thing is the dissolving of language and cultural barriers. Here we have pictured an app that basically will translate in real time, but it doesn't just translate the text in real time. It actually attempts to match up the fonts and colors of the text, completely replacing it so you're barely aware that the other language exists. Now, as we get better with technology that overlays things such as Google Glass, we'll start to see that these barriers won't exist anymore and the whole world will become more accessible. And I think that that's an important part of this coming technology, is making the world more accessible and reducing the intimidation that kind of comes with some of those cultural barriers. Now, I'd love to say that it's all roses, but it obviously isn't. There are tons of dangers here. Now, this is a picture from the Sony hack, which was pretty famous. Now, as this data is being collected, obviously, we can run into some problems. If measurements are being taken, they can be stolen, and that can cause various problems. Additionally, we've got things like government overreach. Things like, certain types of governments may end up removing words or phrases from translational databases in order to suppress ideas and thoughts. Obviously, there are more nefarious ways in which this can be used. You could hijack a vacation itinerary and end up leading somebody into a trap. Now, obviously you're going to be okay because you have technology in you that can tell your health and your location and all these sorts of things. Crime will be a lot harder, but still the risks do exist. Anytime a system becomes advanced in a certain way, it lends itself to unpredictable behavior. This is why software engineers, for example, write as few lines of code as possible. The more lines of code you have, the more unexpected complexity that enters into the system. Now, additionally, we have things like environmental concerns. We have pictured here Mount Everest. Now, experienced explorers used to die on the way to the top of Everest. Now it's become littered with tourist garbage and oxygen canisters. Now, it's the very fact that this was inaccessible previously that kept this place pristine. Now, in order to make sure that we preserve these pristine places, we should probably ask ourselves, should we really make every corner of the Earth accessible to humans? Do we have the kind of track record that shows that we know how to keep these places pristine? Climate change is obviously another huge issue. Given travel and factory pollution, micropollutants in the air are stopping the white ice from reflecting heat back into space, and instead they're absorbing that heat and melting the ice caps. This is a problem, and it does need to be addressed now. There's a common theme in exploration that anytime you're entering an environment, you should be attempting to impact that as little as possible, because you never know what you're going to introduce into an environment that could devastate it. And as we begin to shed these biological limitations, as we begin to hack our bodies, we need to ask these questions. We need to inwardly reflect and say, ask, how can we have this experience without ruining it for the next person to come along? Because my children will never see a pristine Everest. It doesn't exist anymore. It's over. Now, let's talk a little bit further in the future. Let's talk about kind of some of the things that might be coming in, not like 10 or 20 years, but in 50 years or 100 years. Obviously, suborbital space travel is a thing now, and obviously that's going to continue on into the future. However, very shortly after suborbital becomes safe, you're going to see things like space hotels, right? Hotels that are just orbiting the Earth. You can experience low gravity, you can experience those sorts of things. But also underwater hotels. There definitely have been plans for these. I recently saw one from a Japanese designer that they actually think might be plausible and that they want to attempt to do. We're also going to need to look at the definition of what places are. And so I want to talk a minute about digital worlds. Now, I play Minecraft, and my girlfriend and my son and millions of people play Minecraft. I don't know if everybody here knows what it is, but it's a digital sandbox where you can kind of play and build. There's no game objective. You're just kind of building and playing. However, in Minecraft, you're starting to see the construction of monuments and architectural wonders. And this is kind of strange. So for example, I have shown here a faithful recreation of the Starship Enterprise. Now this was actually built block for block. It's a completely faithful recreation. It has the bar, the bridge, the bathrooms on the 3rd floor, everything. Now this was actually a community-built effort. People would come to assist in the building of this, and it is massive, and it took a lot of man hours, but the majority of people who visit this server come just to visit. They just come to see this architectural wonder in a place that doesn't physically exist. Now that's a very interesting idea. You also have, I have a picture here of the Royal Palace, and here is the Minecraft version of the Royal Palace. Again, a faithful recreation. You can walk through the rooms and take a tour. Now, when I'm on a Minecraft server and I have a headset on and I'm talking to somebody, I don't feel like I'm logged into a client on my computer. I feel like I'm there with them in my mind emotionally. And when I talk about it, I say, come over here, I'm past the tree. These are visual and spatial cues. And as we continue to press forward, these things are going to really, really dissolve our understanding. So basically, also we have Second Life. Now, Second Life has over 1 million regular users, which they call residents. Now, these residents, 1 million users, that's actually larger than the population of some countries. And this is, again, no game objective. There are actually people who go there to shop. They go there to dance. There are church services. Countries have official Second Life embassies, okay? So with technologies that are becoming more prevalent, such as Oculus Rift and things that can allow us to become fully immersed in these, and with haptics, you can begin to touch and feel these non-physical places. And at that point, once these digital worlds start to become better than the real world, where you can fly, where you can teleport, where you can experience space easily, what's going to be the point in unplugging? Some people won't. Additionally, with drones and these sorts of things, and as these things become, again, more integrated, you're going to see the concept of rented out exploration. So, for example, two people, a person controlling a drone in Sao Paulo can meet up with a person controlling a drone in Beijing, and they can actually take a walk through a park in Paris. Or, as a family, you could rent submersible drones and actually participate in scientific exploration of the deepest trenches of the ocean. Or, perhaps space. Begin to explore the various dunes and craters on Mars, or swim underneath the ice in Europa. These are actually all things that are coming very quickly. Now, this doesn't mean that physical travel is doomed. Biohacking is actually beginning to look into how we increase our tolerances. How do you get the blood to retain oxygen longer so that you can stay submerged for longer, such as, maybe being able to dive 4 hours beneath the surface of the ocean. Now, as our understanding of the brain continues to evolve, we'll begin to understand how chemistry affects the way in which we write memories, have experiences, have emotions. We'll begin to be able to manipulate those things. We'll begin to be able to create experiences for people. Now, try to imagine shared memories. Try to imagine hopping into one of these live streamers and riding along and experiencing every part of that experience. Not just the parts that you can visually see and hear, but feeling the emotions that come along with meeting somebody that you're attracted to, or the fear of bungee jumping for the first time, and being able to directly feel that with them. Now, also, we have the idea of being able to historically feel things. So if I record my data and how hella nervous I am about this speech, I can let somebody feel that nervousness and share that experience with me. And that ability to connect with people is absolutely important, and it really does dissolve some of the barriers that divide us in this world. And that's one of the things that I truly want to do, is show people that we are all the same at our core. We all have fears and insecurities, and this is an important part of moving forward and coming together as a culture. Now, this might sound like fantastical ramblings, but this is actually all theoretically possible. This is covered in Michio Kaku's book, The Future of the Mind. And it's all permissible within science. Science that we have the beginnings and foundations and understanding of this. So, in order to rein it in, kind of come back to something that's more probable, I want to talk about, again, maybe the next 10 or 20 years, where wearables and technology that's tracking biological data increasingly will become known. We'll get algorithms that really can start to predict our behaviors, predict what we want, and carry our data in a sphere that kind of surrounds us. We're going to build adaptable environments so that when you walk into your hotel room, pictures of your family will spill out, pictures of your family dog, reminders of what you wanted to do on that vacation, these sorts of things. And then as we begin to integrate this technology into our body, we will no longer be packing these devices. We will be the devices. We won't be using the Internet of Things. We'll be the Internet of Things. and the people that we love, the depth of our experience, and the things that we have yet to see will be the configurations for those devices. Thank you for your time.
Muchas gracias. Vamos ahora a presentar a Sergio Ferrer, redactor de Tecnautas, del Confidencial, que va a empezar con la ronda de preguntas, ¿vale? Él va a iniciar parte del debate que vamos a tener ahora de 10 minutos con Tim y luego pasaremos a las mesas redondas, ¿de acuerdo? Sergio, por favor.
Gracias.
I'd get a little closer.
Hola, vale. Bueno, voy a comenzar yo. Espero que les haya parecido tan interesante como a mí. Voy a romper el hielo con una serie de preguntas y luego quien quiera pues puede hacer las suyas propias. Okay, Tim. So most of the people here, they already live connected 24 hours a day, myself included. But I think that they would refuse to become the device, as you say, to be the Internet of Things. So why this fear to take the next step?
Why is there fear to take the next step? I think that we've traditionally held our body as kind of this sacred thing, not to be tampered with. And there are just ways in which we view the human experience as though it's capped. Right? And so the idea is we can tamper with the body as long as we don't go above this threshold. And that threshold is a moving kind of goalpost. So you have people who, nobody would say, oh, we're tampering with the body. We live to 80 years now. We're not dying at 30 of our teeth. We should stop tampering. We're going to continue to tamper with our body. And I think that fear will erode as the technology becomes available. You have, there's something called the law of diffusion of innovation that basically says you're going to have an early adopter, they're going to pay whatever they can, they're going to do whatever they can to get that technology. Then you have more of an early majority, and then finally a majority, and then finally the laggards at the end.
So you're the early adopter here.
Yeah, I'm the earliest of adopters, yeah.
Okay, and what if I tell you that I'm happy with my smartphone, but I don't need to take this next step because I don't want to give all this information and I don't want to become the device. I want to disconnect from technology if I want.
Yeah.
How would you convince me?
Well, I actually wouldn't. I don't really want to convince people to do this because, like in America, we have colonies of the Amish, right? And these are people who have rejected technology. Technology like the cell phone, technology like electricity. And, they seem perfectly happy doing that. And I see no problem with that. You're always going to have that sort of rejection of the modern. And that's no different here. So I wouldn't attempt to convince anybody. I think that the benefits that this will provide in terms of health and the benefits that this will provide in terms of convenience kind of speak for themselves. So yeah.
So this is not for everybody, maybe.
I don't know. I think that everybody could probably use a better window into their health, but that's my opinion, and I certainly would not force that on anybody else. I understand that what I'm talking about right now seems radical. It won't for very long.
So how long? When it will be normal?
I think normal. I don't know, I'd like to say 20 years, most people will have the ability to go to a clinic and get an implanted device of some sort. Not just one that passively monitors their health, but something that's actively assisting their experience.
And you have talked about Neil Harbison, that is the first human being to be officially and legally recognized as a cyborg by a government, by British government, I think. And do you claim this status?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a cyborg by the standards that he's considered. I wouldn't necessarily want to change my status simply because I don't really think that cyborg is anything other than kind of a word that we've invented to kind of symbolize the crossing of the flesh barrier, We use technology. I got all kinds of wearable technology. I was a cyborg before I implanted anything in myself because I was using technology to affect the way in which I experience the world. And so I'd say we're all cyborgs now. Yeah.
And have you ever had any problem with your implants in airports, for example?
I'm sorry?
Have you ever had any problems with your implants, with your technology inside of your body in the airport, for example?
No, actually. I was really surprised by that. I left the States and I got the body scanner and the full United States, TSA kind of treatment. And, obviously they're taking that data and they scanned my arm. Nothing was in my arm. I left the Dusseldorf airport and one person looked at my scan and brought over somebody else, and then they go, I don't know, just let me go. And then they just let me go. And and then on the way back in, I figured, on my way back into America, I'm definitely going to get a question. Nobody asked me a single question. I had a huge box in my arm, not a single question. Not a single question. And I was mentally prepared for it. I was ready to fight the good fight, and nothing.
Glad to hear it. And you follow the philosophy of do-it-yourself. You implanted yourself by yourself the technology in your arm, but I think that this can be dangerous because maybe it should be done by a professional, not by everyone. What do you think about this?
It's definitely something that I don't encourage anybody to necessarily cut themselves open. I don't actually cut myself open. I have professional piercers and body modification artists do this sort of thing, people who are experienced with this sort of thing. But, everybody is free to do what they want. And for example, Emil Grofstra from Dangerous Things sells an auto-injector kit, but he actually paired with a lot of biotech people to kind of come up with these techniques and talk about that. So I did have my biologist at Grindhouse implant the XNT chip, which is made by Dangerous Things, in my hand, and that was no problem. Now that technology, those auto-injectors, have been used for something like 10 or 15 years on dogs and cats to chip them with no problems whatsoever. So that was a fairly tested technology, and it's fairly easy to learn. The more complicated stuff, I advise going to a professional of some sort or another.
Okay, so it's like putting a chip in a cat, but you're putting in a human being.
What's that?
It's like a chip for a cat or a dog?
Yeah, the RFID chip that I have is no different than the ones that they use to identify stray dogs and things like that. Obviously, I use it much more effectively than dogs and cats do, but yeah, it's no different.
And some technologies that you have presented here, I think that they can lead to a job loss.
Yeah, I agree.
What do you think about this?
I think that technological job loss is all over the place. However, I don't think that that's anything new. We don't have cobblers anymore, right? Like people who fix your shoes, right? We don't have that anymore. And, but I think that the job loss we might be looking at here might end up being more dramatic, which means that we're going to have to shift our understanding of economics to facilitate the idea that maybe some people just don't do anything for a living. They don't work. And hopefully automation and the robotization of the workforce will allow for some amount of breathing room to eventually allow it so that not the full percentage of the population needs to be working to get what they need. And if you could basically get an economy that can completely produce 100% of the needs of its people using only 10% of the actual population, at that point, I think you'd find more than 10% of the population actually wants to work. I want to work. I don't have any desire to retire, and I'm a guy who wants to live to be like 1,000 years old. So, as far as I'm concerned, there's always going to be people who want to work. And I think what we're doing right now is taking the percentage of people who don't want to work and holding them hostage by their bellies. And I think we can, hopefully, we can reduce that and eliminate that eventually.
And you have talked about the issues and problems of these technologies at the end. And I think that by far privacy is the biggest issue here, because we are already very concerned about privacy, and now you are talking about putting the technology inside of our bodies.
Yeah.
How is this going to be solved?
Well, Grindhouse does open source technology. So we show everybody how we did everything. We let out the designs, we let out the software, we talk about how we tested it. Allowing that, I think, would kind of reduce some of that, because, like, you have when the NSA scandal went down, you had Google was giving data to the NSA, Microsoft was actually providing exploits before they fixed them to the NSA so that they could get into your computer. But you know who wasn't worried? Linux users. Linux users weren't worried, because the second that a security flaw enters into the Linux system, 1,000 fat guys living in their mother's basement leap forward, fix the security flaw, and then you have 5 solutions by breakfast. And this is the many eyes theory, and the idea of mutually assuring for everyone that their data can be kept safe. Additionally, I think that people opt out of data all the time, and I don't think that that's a trend that'll change either.
Okay. And last question. I think it's a stupid question for a transhumanist like you, but if the body or planets are not the limit, where is the limit?
I think that humans have historically broken apart every limit that's hit them. We've lived through ice ages. We've flung ourselves into space using ridiculously low-scale technology. I don't think that I couldn't envision a limit, and I definitely wouldn't want to put one on us. What we're going to become is unforeseeable, and I'm really excited in seeing it unfold. Thank you.
Vale. Ya me callo, si alguien quiere hacer alguna pregunta.
Hi team, nice to meet you. My name is Jose from Colombia. I'm a tour guide. I would like to ask you this. How do you think directly this new way of seeing life will directly improve the experience of a regular tourist nowadays?
So
a regular one. What do you think if somebody doesn't want to become a cyborg but just want to go explore and use better technology? How will this directly improve the experience of tourism? Thank you.
Well, for example, biohacking, you're talking about, for example, like I said, Neil Harbison can actually differentiate color better than the human eye. Now, if we can actually begin to start manipulating the human eye and allow it to see a larger depth of color, then the average tourist is actually going to get a much better view of the rainforest, for example. Things will be brighter, the experience will be more intense, and actually mundane experiences, or experiences that where you might not even consider a typical tourist attraction, might end up becoming one. For example, nobody knows about like weird magnetic anomalies, but there may actually be a day where tourists come to visit because they feel this weird magnetic anomaly that would have nothing to do with the current 5 senses that we have now. So we can begin to add senses, and at which point that would deeply enrich any kind of tourist experience.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
¿Alguna pregunta más?
Yeah.
Wow. Hello.
Hi.
Camilo from Colombia. The question is, there's like 2 questions. How does the device that you have communicate with your brain? Or do you need another device to ask him? Or like, I mean, like you want to send that data, how do you tell the device to send the data?
Well, I do that with a lot of programming and automation and things like that. A lot of this is about kind of getting this window without having to pay too much attention to what's going on. So for example, I could be charting my temperature, but I send a text message to myself when I get a fever, right? Or something like this, or a huge spike in my temperature. So something would alert me to that right now. Now, very shortly, there's actually already an implant designed which will be implanted in the brain, which is a simple toggle switch. You'll be able to turn things on and off by thought alone. Oh. And obviously getting it the other way, other direction is possible as
That's
well.
the future. Okay, and the second question is, do you do all this independently, or do you have already big companies or other investors from
well,
technology to help you with the project?
Grindhouse is kind of a, it's half a company and half like a philosophy club. And so as a result of that, we tend to reject money from huge companies and things like that. And we prefer to take a bootstrap, DIY kind of approach, which translates mostly to I work like 2 jobs, and so does everybody in the organization. I work my job that helps me eat, and then I go and I work at Grindhouse for 8 hours a day. But once we'll be releasing devices, and then hopefully that'll end up funding the rest of us. We don't want to be manipulated by money.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm so sorry. Lo siento mucho, pero es que vamos sobre el tiempo.
You guys can ask me questions after too. I love talking to people.
Ahí está. Tim va a estar aquí todos estos días, le vais a poder ver y vais a poder charlar con él, que ya lo veis, es un encanto. You are charming and absolutely nice.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, vamos a empezar ahora con los paneles de debate que vamos a tener hasta las 2 de la tarde, ¿de acuerdo? Voy y tengo el gusto de presentar a Philip Filipov, el jefe de B2B de Skyscanner, al señor José Petisco, consejero delegado de Cisco España, y a Daniel Kersler, vicepresidente de marketing para Europa de Starwood Hotels and Resorts. Vamos a analizar durante estos 3 paneles de debate 3 cosas de las que ha hablado Tim ya y han hablado nuestros ponentes. Primero, los dispositivos y los cambios que va a haber en los dispositivos, la movilidad y cómo va a cambiar, y finalmente vamos a hablar sobre cómo vamos a buscar los viajes una vez que todos, tanto dispositivos como movilidad, cambien, ¿de acuerdo?